Hello, guys. We are glad you are here. Welcome to Real Talk at the Round Table. We have awesome Coach William Forkham
and awesome Coach David Smith
with our special guest today, Kenneth Jackson.
Hi, guys. How are you?
You know, we are blessed by the best. Hallelujah. We're blessed by the best for sure. Happy to be here. Happy to be seen. Happy to be alive. I'm just really excited to be around, like-minded people, joking, really just cutting loose with you guys before the podcast started. And I think that is a huge part of personal development. Find your people just so you can kind of check that off. You've got all of the essentials checked, so you don't have to focus so much on them. Kind of focus on some sidebar comedy. It's gonna get you through, So yeah, I'm happy about that.
Yeah, so we are honored to have Ken here with us with his wolf picture in the background. So today we are live.
It is a wolf.
Today we are live, unscripted and raw. We are going to be talking about, in the line of personal development, a lot of people work in different areas and struggle different areas, and everybody has a life. I mean, tell me somebody that's not busy, and I can give them some assignments, right? Everybody is going to be overly busy with their life, with whatever's going on. Everybody has their own situation. Well, Ken has a unique situation, so we wanted to bring him on and wanted to share a little bit about that, the struggles of dealing with what we're going to be talking about while in debt, getting out of debt, even with the circumstances, and then being able to maximize. So no matter what situation you're going through, you can come out of it, as Ken has done, and he will show us how to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the introduction. A little bit about my story. I went to college for mechanical engineering. I'm still an engineer as well as a financial coach. But I came out of schooling with 120 grand in debt. I married my wife about, I would say a year later. No, about a year and a half later. And 1 month after we were married, she could not walk any longer. She didn't walk for 8 months because her hips were so damaged from an autoimmune disease where it just attacks all of her cartilage. And at this point, I'm still 90 grand in debt, and I have a job about an hour away from where we live. It honestly, at that point, broke me. It broke me for quite a while. Eventually, I got back up on my feet. We got back up on our feet. She got a dual hip replacement and was walking within like 2 days of that replacement. And once we got there, we focused on just getting out of that debt, because we didn't want to have to make that choice between, me taking care of her or me going to a job where a boss did not understand what was happening in our lives at that time. And that's actually the story of why I became a coach. I want to help those that lost those choices or are in the process of not even knowing they lost a little bit of choice in their life, that they can't go to their boss and be like, hey, I can't come into work right now, or I need to work remotely. And if you can't do that, well, doesn't matter. I'm still good. I can find a new job later, but I, have the ability to go take care of the one I loved. So yeah, I have many stories with caretakers. I got that 8 months of my wife literally not walking, and how I survived and how she survived really is, sadly, I made her a sandwich every day before work. I packed in a lunchbox. I put it next to her bed. we got a lot of other medical equipment and not covered by insurance, unfortunately. So, there's a lot of cost that goes in with these kind of things. And going along with debt, that makes it just so much harder. You have to choose between the things you want or need, or I guess it's like a want need exactly. You can survive without it, but it could make, the person you're caring for's life so much better, quality wise, but you just can't afford it. So, there's that. There's also the fact that with debt, and you have to have that job. We all know you can't live this life without working. Now, with debt, you definitely can't live this life without an actual job. Caretaking is work. I don't care what anyone says. Caretaking is work. And caretaking doesn't mean they're in a medical crisis. It could also mean, you're a stay-at-home parent, or you're a single stay-at-home parent. Like you're trying to work everything, and it's tough. It's a tough world. And with debt, it made it even tougher for me. It makes you kind of break down a little bit. And this, an unfortunate situation with the caretakers is that a lot of people who take care of their loved ones, be it a elderly parent, be it, a spouse taking care of a spouse, or just being a parent taking care of your children, your well-being is often overlooked from the outside with your friends, with family. They don't see, they're like, oh, well, this, especially with, spouses that need medical attention and parents that need medical attention. They're like, well, they're going through it. What are you doing? I've actually been told that. And I'm just like, I didn't say it at the time, but I'm thinking in my mind, I'm just like, what do you mean? Like I feel like you have to be heartless to think that the person that I love, that I'm caring for, is in pain every day and can't do certain tasks that they want to do. And you think it's not like a problem for me.
Yeah.
And like it's rough because people don't see that side. They're just like, oh, well, that person's, they have the physical ailment. Well, yes, they have a physical ailment. They also probably have, emotional and mental and spiritual stress about that too. But the caretaker is also going through those very similar mental, spiritual, and emotional stresses. They're just not dealing with the physical aspect. But the physical aspect is just one part.
So how has this season, where you have really rose up to the plate and started to care for your lovely wife, helps you become more articulate in the way that you are experiencing stressors in your life, physically, emotionally, spiritually, emotionally?
More articulate on those?
Yeah.
Well, for a while, it didn't, because I wasn't focusing on myself. I didn't even have time to realize how much stress I was actually in, or any of the products, like the byproducts of happening. I was focused on my wife for the longest time. It's only, very recently that I kind of woke up and be like, hey, I told my wife, I'm like, I just kind of need a break. I left my engineering job. I'm getting back into engineering again, but I left it. I started the coaching business. It's going fine, but it was just like I needed a break from engineering for a little bit, and a break from just working, and only having just a small amount of time to myself.
Yeah.
I didn't even know who I was anymore. I, gained I don't know, 40, 50 pounds of weight, not muscle. And you know, a lot of my health went down the wayside. I didn't focus on myself. I was focused on my wife. And now I'm still, taking care of my wife. She's more independent nowadays, which is great. And we've been married for a little over 5 years now. We've gone through more struggles than just the 8 months of not walking.
Yeah.
Which I'll talk about a little bit later, because the 8 months of not walking, I was still in debt. I was taking care of her.
Yeah.
And I had to make a choice between going to work every day and staying home with my wife with a load of debt. And this was my debt. My wife didn't have any debt coming into the marriage. I brought it in. So it is our debt because we became one, but at the same time, I'd still take accountability for doing that.
Right.
You just have to take accountability for marrying someone that has debt. So,
True. Yeah. So I have another question.
Sure.
Trying to remember it.
Well, I'm just going to say this. All three of us here have directions in that. You yourself takes care of people.
Yeah.
And so, what Ken is going through, you do, but you do for patients, he does for his loved one.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. So that's right. Okay, so there's this idea whenever you're taking care of your loved one, in this case your wife, that if you focus on yourself, right, if you focus on yourself at all, then you're being selfish. Walk us through how you found that to be not true, and this kind of idea of being on an airplane, the airplane's going down, the oxygen masks fall, and you have to put yours on first before you can assist anybody else.
Yeah.
So walk us through that.
You know how I kind of realized that, and this is really weird, but it was a Disney movie. It
You know
was
the truth right now. You know this is like going to be the truth right now.
Yeah. Because one thing that me and my wife do, we watch, we go to the movies, about once a month and just watch one of the movies. The movie's called Elemental, and in the story of Elemental, really, I hope spoilers. If you don't want spoilers, shut your ears off now, mute the podcast. But the the really short synopsis of the movie is that there's a fire element and a water element, kind of a Romeo and Juliet type of scenario, but that kind of takes a back burner to the fire elemental. She has this anger issue. She gets just frustrated so quickly. And it's because she felt pressured to take over her dad's business. And you don't learn that until later. That's really what it is. She just feels like she's, has to do this because her parents, are aging and everything, needs to retire because, they're working too hard at the age that they are. And she's like, I need to take care of the business. That's what they wanted for me. That's what I'm going to do. And so she kind of just locked in on that. But it came out in anger that she didn't even understand why she was angry. And I saw that in myself. Not that I didn't want to take care of my wife, but I realized I was like, I'm doing something wrong and it's coming out in anger. And I just kind of I sat back and I was like, wow, okay. So, I was like angry at everything. I didn't explode at my wife very often, but traffic, don't get me started on traffic. I road raged very hard in my car. And other things, and ranting to my wife and well, I'm like, where is this anger coming from? And I saw that movie and I was like, okay, now I get it. I'm doing something I'm not meant to really do at the moment. And the thing was is like I wasn't focusing on myself, so it kind of was like I need to focus on myself. I need to find myself. I need to put on that oxygen mask, as you said, before I really can take care and love my wife the way she deserves. Um, and yeah, so it's not instantaneous. I didn't just stop being angry or anything. It was a process, and it takes time. And you have to communicate that with the person you're taking care of. Got to communicate that to other people. You know, you can go. I saw a therapist, psychiatrist, and everything, trying to get through some of this stuff. And
good for you.
yeah, and I actually been recently diagnosed with ADHD, and I was just like, and honestly, getting on a medication has helped me tremendously with so many things. But I wouldn't have noticed that if I didn't take a break, because I was focusing on everything else except myself. I was focusing on my job. I was focusing on my wife, you know, flip-flopping between them. And as humans do, what was it? Tiffany, you had on your podcast a couple weeks ago, I think. She's like, you go that junk food, as you could say. My junk food is junk food, but it's also video games. So guess what I did when I had the little bit of time to myself? It wasn't like, oh, okay, what could I have done better? What's going on in my head? No, it was just like, I need to numb my brain a little bit and play games. So that's what I did. But when I got that break and I asked my wife for it, you know, communication is key. You can't just leave everything behind without, talking to your wife or spouse. And yeah, that's when I took the break from work, and I realized, I was like, okay, I get it. There's something wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know just yet, and I kept growing and growing and growing. I was like, I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And now I'm ready to get back to engineering. I'm ready to get coaching. Love the people I've coached so far, and I just want to help them, you know. And I have a soft spot for caretakers. I also have a soft spot for people, young couples, you know, early in their marriage, have debt because I'm 32, my wife is 34. She's had 7 joint replacements. I don't care if you're young and think you're invincible. Things happen in life. Could be a car accident. It could just be some kind of infection. You don't know. And I don't want you to find out while you have debt. That's my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's key, because the key thing I like what you said is we're all going to go through things. Things are going to come up as we get. I don't like to say old because I don't get old, but as we get wiser, our body there's things that's going to happen. But I love how you said that you want to get out of debt before those things happen. And so while you were in the beginning stages, you're like, crap, we need to get out of debt now so that we can later on down the road. And I like that mindset, because that mindset pushed to growth. That mindset pushed for victory. Bringing the inner champion, he was like, I got to step up to the plate. Let's go.
Right.
It's go time. I love that attitude.
Right. Yeah. You know, it's up to us to channel the inner champion inside. Like, if we don't do it, nobody's going to.
Or a coach pushing you to get it out.
Amen. 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 Yeah, a lot of times it takes a coach that is going to push you, for sure. You know, but at the end of the day, I think that saying, you know, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink, you know. But, you know, I you know, my own personal journey, I've had those moments, both moments of wanting to change so badly and not knowing how. And, like, in that case, I would need a coach or a guide to get me there, because I've had the want to, it's not lacking the know-how. But then also I had those moments where, like, I knew exactly what I was supposed to do and I didn't have the want to. And I think in those moments, there are those pivotal clutch moments whenever we know what we should do, but we don't want to. And whenever we press through those, that's when the most change happens. Mm-hmm. That's when the most change happens, because our heavenly coach up there, he knows. You can't fool him. Yeah. And when we give a good, honest effort and do the things we don't want to do, like love the unlovable, love our enemies, love those who spitefully use us and abuse us and treat our kindness for weakness, whatever it is, he sees that and he rewards us accordingly.
And I love the fact that you brought him up, because he knows the plans he has for us, plans of future, hope, prosperity, right?
Yeah.
He knows the plans for us, and you called him your coach,
right?
Your heavenly coach.
Absolutely.
So now the only way the earthly coach will know is they set up visions, things like that, so they know where you're going, so they can push you into it. Because you got to have vision. As the good book says, you will perish for a lack of vision.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. It's wonderful.
And kind of, speaking on that, my wife and I have a vision. Well, we're debt-free besides our mortgage. Our vision right now is to get out of that mortgage as quickly as possible. And trust me, like, I don't want to have a mortgage, but my wife really doesn't want to have a mortgage. And it was actually a sacrifice for her to let me have that break from my engineering career. And honestly, I love my wife for that. And sometimes, again, the people we take care of as caretakers, they might not always give us that option. But if you plan for it, like we have an emergency fund. We knew what money we'd be spending, and we cut down our budget as much as we could. And we were like, okay, I can take this much time, not be paid, and we would still be safe even from an emergency that happens during that period of time. And kind of like, a foil to the time where my wife had, couldn't walk for 8 months, and I had debt. About 4 years into our marriage, 4 years into our marriage, she was getting her last 2 replacements as of yet, which were her knees. And so she got both knees done. And there's a very small percentage of something that can occur when you break or cut into a bone in the leg. And unfortunately, that happened to my wife. So that caused her to have, technically, tiny little fat particles get into her bloodstream and caused her to have hundreds of tiny little strokes. And she went into a coma. And I mean, like a technical coma for about 2 weeks. She came out of the coma. It's not like, what they show on TV. They wake up, they start talking. At least for her, that's not how she woke up out of a coma. Technically out of the coma, she was able to track, like, your finger. She was able to track people. She wasn't verbal. She could barely understand or at least comprehend in a sense of yes or no. She was more responsive to me than she was her nurses. But yeah, it was a terrible time. So she was in the hospital for a month, and then a rehabilitation hospital for another month. And here's the thing. I had to make a choice again between work and my wife. Guess what? This time we had an emergency fund. I went to I called my boss the day after, and I was like, hey, I don't know when I will be back or if I will be back. If like in the United States, you have a thing if you've been there for a year called Family Medical Leave Act. You can take 12 weeks over that course of the year without technically punishment. You don't get paid for it, but you can take the 12 weeks and you will have your job back or an equivalent job after those 12 weeks. And I was like, I don't know if I'll be back in 12 weeks. So I told my boss, I'm like, I understand if you need to let me go and replace me. And he was just like, I'm not going to do that. But that's me being lucky with a boss that cared. But before I didn't have a boss that seemed to care as much. But I was ready. I was just like, I don't care. I don't know when I'm coming back. I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on exactly. I don't know when she's going to wake up. I don't know when she's going to be able to be independent again. And but I've very proudly and very strongly said, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be there for my wife.
And having that emergency fund set back empowered you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. The emergency fund and no debt, because you could keep your expenses limited as much as possible. There's another thing you can also do called a recast on your mortgage. Doesn't affect the interest rate. You don't have to pay closing costs. Not every place does this, but because we paid extra so far up to that point, I asked them. I was like, can I do a recast? And so it dropped my payment down without changing any terms or causing me to pay any extra. I was just like, I want to lower my bills as much as possible because I want to be as safe as possible. And that's what we did. And, God got us through it. God let us do that. God brought me and kept my wife here.
Hallelujah.
And as weird as it sounds, we're sometimes a dark-humored couple on occasion. She likes to say I married a younger guy because, they technically die sooner, but I want him around them before and she's like, I need to die first. And I'm like, no, I need to die first. And, that first day at the hospital when she was in the coma, I was like holding her hand. I'm like, you can't win like this. You're not allowed to win now. Like, it's supposed to be when we're old, not now. And yeah,
you guys
I pray.
What? You guys are adorable.
Well, one thing you remind me of earlier when you were saying, how she was more attentive to you than she was to the nurses. It brings my mind to thinking how opposites actually work. Women, generally speaking, not speaking of all women, but they like the bad guys, the ones that's disrespectful to them, the ones that abuse them, the ones that are harsh. The nice ones, they have a hard time.
I think that's why it's so important to play and to flirt.
Mm-hmm. When you are searching for a job, if you need a job, I'm desperate, I need a job now, I can't find one. But when I have a job and I don't really care, I can find them all over the place. When you need to talk to your boss, you need some leeway. If you need that leeway and you need some grace, but you need that job, he's not kind at all. He don't care about you. This is a job. If you want it, you're going to do it. But when you don't need the job, like the country song says, take this job, and when you have that availability, the bosses are really going to work with you because they want to keep you. No matter what we go in life, we realize that the opposite is actually true. Do you know you actually see things upside down and your brain has to flip it right side up? A wise person once said that the first will be the last will be first. The smallest, the greatest is the smallest. It's funny how his ways of looking at things is much bigger than our ways. But in every single thing we do, it seems to take that effect. If we're desperate, it's not going to happen. If we're not desperate, we don't need it, it comes flocking to us.
Well said, bro.
That's from a good man. I heard the wisdom say.
I like it.
Yeah.
But that's what your story kind of brought me to.
Yeah.
It really is true. Like, when you're desperate, it's harder to find things. And that could also kind of be like your mindset. You're desperate, you start seeing more of the negative, and when you're not, you see the positive in things.
Mm-hmm.
Be it the situation at hand. Trust me, I think the people at the hospital they might have thought I was like a sociopath or something. Because, my wife comes out of surgery, they said she's recovered and everything, and then she starts doing some of the weird stuff, because then that's where the fat is finally getting to her brain. And I wasn't freaking out. And they're like, they got the chaplain and everything that was at the hospital. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, I'm fine with you praying with me. I'm okay, because those people, the health professionals, are doing their job. If I'm like frantic and trying to get in their way, that's taking them, out of helping my wife.
Right.
And honestly, but I think they were expecting me to start freaking out. Like, don't get me wrong, like, kind of internally, I'm a little freaking out, but I'm like, it's in God's hands. It's in your hands. God's put my wife in those people's hands. And, I thank God, and I thank them for being there. I read up on what could have happened. What happened was a fat embolism, technically. That could happen 3 days after. And trust me, it might have been an entirely different situation if they weren't there when it happened. And I probably would have been at work, and then I would have came home to I don't know what.
Right.
And like, yeah, that freaks me out, but that's a what if, and it didn't happen. So it's not anything to worry about. But like, it's just kind of interesting when you see the hospital staff and they're kind of like looking. It almost felt like they were looking at me weird. I'm not gonna lie. And it was a hospital in Philadelphia. We're not from Philadelphia. That's just where her surgeons are at. And I had another story from Philadelphia about my own. I went to school in Philly, got clipped by a car while I was riding a bike, and the nurse that was taking care of like the cut and slight fracture to my leg was like, "You're not from here, are you?" I'm like, "No." She's like, "Yeah, you're way too nice to be in Philly." I was just like, "Okay, I feel bad for you. Like, you're taking care of these people, and apparently they're not very nice to you." And I get it. You see a lot of people that are kind of almost at their worst season in their life, and it's a tough job. But I appreciate the caretakers that are paid to take care of people, and I appreciate the caretakers that aren't paid to take care of their loved ones.
Yeah. The city of brotherly love.
You ever see how brothers love? They usually beat up on each other. So I honestly think that's a good name for it.
I like it. So what about that moment when the hospital professionals were looking at you made you think that they were waiting for you to freak out? Were they waiting for like an emotional response that they felt like that they just weren't getting because you just had yourself in check, kind of, and you were like kind of blank maybe? Was that it, or what do you think?
I wasn't blank. I literally, I was just like, they took me out of the room, which is understandable. One, hospital rooms aren't large like they are in the in movies and TV series. They're usually kind of tiny. And they were like, "Hey, could you leave?" I was like, "Yep, yep." And I'm just like sitting in my chair. I'm just praying. That's what I was doing.
Amen.
I had my head bowed. I was praying. When they came up to me, I would ask questions as much as possible. Like, what's going on? Is she, things like that. Probably not nearly as probing questions as other people might ask, but that's, I'm more of like I guess you could say a big picture person in that kind of sense. When it's just like, they ask, I ask the questions like, what I feel really matters. Is my wife okay? What's going on with her? Not like, oh, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Have you tried this? Other people I've seen do that. And I'm just like, no, what matters is is my wife alive? Is she okay? And will she recover? Some of those questions they honestly couldn't answer at the time because, like I said, it was a very rare thing for what she went through.
Hence the praying.
And prayer changes things.
Prayer absolutely changes.
By the way, speaking of which, we are a little bit over a half hour.
Yep.
So that means anybody that's in the room, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and we will be glad to get to those questions. But until then, we'll just keep talking.
Yeah, keep talking. Kind of shifting gears to personal development, because this is what this podcast is all about. What's your vision now, Ken?
What's my vision?
Yeah.
Well, a portion of that vision is paying off our mortgage.
Right.
That's one thing. A portion of my vision, I haven't actually looked at it from my own perspective yet. That's actually, again, like you said, personal development. Still working on it. Still working on trying to look at myself rather than just my wife. But another vision is me and my wife, we met swing dancing. And a little different, but sure, yeah.
Probably a lot different.
Like that.
But we met swing dancing, and a portion of that vision is my wife doesn't see herself as a dancer anymore, and I would love to change that, because I think if it changes in her mindset that she is a dancer or she will be a dancer, that she will work at it harder than she's currently now.
Wow.
And I understand that she's in pain a lot, and things cause her pain, like stepping and going down and upstairs, things like that do cause her pain, but it also causes her, I feel like it causes her more pain that she doesn't do it often enough where she actually gets the muscle buildup, which would protect her. And I'm sure medical professions and even other people that go through the same thing or similar stuff as my wife can debate me on that, and that's fine. It's a difference of opinion. I'm not going through it. I'm not forcing my wife to do things. I'm just trying to push her a little bit.
I would definitely come into agreement with you and say muscle buildup is going to benefit your wife.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put her on a 600-pound deadlift.
No.
It's just small steps for major growth.
Right.
Like there's a book out, The Atomic Habits.
Yep.
Make a small change across the board for the big impact. So you can use what's it called? Tension ropes to actually use other parts of your body to strengthen. Having videos when she was dancing, just to kind of like get it in her mind.
Yeah.
Protein drinks, because protein builds when you're having issues. It builds and helps repair it.
I'll probably drink 1 protein shake a day.
Well, I'm required to do 4 per the doctors because
Catching
of
up.
what I
Catching up
got.
with this guy.
What I got trying to heal my foot. So they have me trying to build that up, and so the protein's supposed to be fixing it.
Yeah.
So I have to get 200 grams of protein a day. But anyhow, this isn't about me. But the thing is, small impacts across the board, just different things to help strengthen her out. Because you don't want to force it, but as soon as her mind changes, and it's like, wait a second, if she's watching all these videos of her dancing, and every time you and her is watching it together, and every time she dances, you smile.
Ooh.
She's like, ooh, I want him to smile. She's going to take her eyes off of herself, and she's going to want to please you. And in that same light, she's going to heal herself.
That's powerful.
Small changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it's got to be like this big, robust dancing that little dancing.
Yeah, just just a little, every little bit.
The high school waddle.
And maybe a twist every now and then.
Yeah. Do a twist.
A thing that she actually does do that I, try to encourage her to do is we have a virtual reality headset, and she plays Beat Saber. The funny thing is she actually is better at Beat Saber than I am. Better, I guess, mental coordination. But yeah, she'll especially before the strokes, she was an expert plus while I was on expert, and I could beat maybe like 1 or 2 of expert plus, and she could beat all the songs in expert plus. Now it's more just she has a physical limitation because she doesn't have that strength back yet to, keep up with the song as much. Yep. It's I encourage virtual reality exercise. I'm starting to do it more now too. I'll probably actually do some exercise after this podcast.
Virtual reality exercise. So does that actually include moving your body?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
So you should do
I can actually text you. I can message you a video of me doing it.
Okay. Hopefully it looks better than David's dancing.
Hey.
I'll let you be the judge of that. I'm not gonna judge it because it might not.
Well, do you do it in like a padded room or somewhere that's like safe at least?
There's a lot of things that you can do with virtual reality. The headset I have is the Quest 2. You can make a boundary, and when you get too close to that boundary, it shows up a wall, not like a real wall, but it's a grid, so it knows that you're getting too close to something.
Right.
So, and for the most part, the things that I do are more like linear and like side to side rather than what you might be thinking, which is all over the place, running around like a crazy person. Like that's
actually, my mind is going to Pokemon Go.
No, that's
reality. Like you had kids out on the street.
That's augmented reality.
That worse. It's like put a VR headset on them. I think that would make it worse.
I would not advise putting it.
No, we don't.
VR headset while you're outside in near roads or public like areas where you could accidentally punch a person or run out in the middle of something.
We do not.
You can do it outside, probably just in your own yard, if you have one.
But set up the boundary first.
And put the fence there so you can't go out of it.
There you go. Not barbed wire.
No.
That'd be fun. Now, it kind of reminds me of, now that we're talking about virtual exercises,
it's not virtual exercise. It's real exercise. Just
it's virtual. But in my office, I have two 10-pound weights. They used to be in the bottom of my trash can just to give weight to it so it wouldn't move around so much. Now I have them on my window ledge, and every now and then I put them hold on, just start going like this.
He does. We were on a Zoom call last night, I think, and there's David. He's just pumping it.
But it's, those small steps, every little bit helps.
Yep.
I see that we got a fourth person in our podcast today.
Yes, Ellie.
Ellie?
Ellie.
Okay. He just didn't want to be left out.
I'm sure it's a girl.
Okay. Just wanted to be part of the podcast. Like, hey, don't forget about me.
Well, we got her while my wife was laid in bed, because, she was lonely for about, 10 to 11 hours a day while I was at work. She's lying in bed. Now, she's doing her own work as well. Luckily, she was able to work from home. But she had no companion. And we got Ellie. And we actually call her, my wife's name is Melanie. We call her the Melanie cat as well sometimes, because when we got her, she got a couple of medical emergencies as well. She had an ear canal ablation because she had a mass in her ear that couldn't be removed by a laser. So she had to have that, pretty much her whole ear canal, somehow removed. I'm not really sure, keen on the details, but yeah. We got her because my wife needed more companionship than I could just give her, because, about 10 to 11 hours a day, I wasn't there. And then when I was home, like, I was there with her, but I wasn't always just there with her, I was working, cleaning the house or making dinner, doing the normal things, like, you still have to have your household ran. Like, you can't. Well, I guess, if you wanted, you could just be a slob and have dishes piling up over everything and just eating out. But when you have debt, that's not really a thing you can do. You got to do it yourself.
I don't think Ellie's going to stand for that.
No.
Yeah, I'm sitting here trying to process this whole conversation, because I know that we have talked before, but wow, I mean, I simply can't relate. I can't relate to your struggle. So I can empathize, but I cannot sympathize. Kudos to you. Good job, man. Keep on keeping on. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and transparent, honest about your struggle. It does seem like a very real struggle.
Now, it brings an interesting question in hand. So you work in the industry that he basically is. He's caretaking for his wife.
On top of his full-time job.
On top of his full-time job. You take care of other patients. Now, you get paid for it because that's what your job is.
Right.
But you do that while you're coaching as well as other things as well.
Right.
So you do the same thing. You're caring for other people while you're doing other things. If anybody could relate, I'm sure it would be you.
And I'm sitting there thinking that too, and thank you for bringing it up. It's a balancing act. It's a balancing act. It really is. Because, like you said, you're trying to run a household, and it's not like I'm only there for them, like their first priority. But I'm also there to, like, help with the household chores. I'm there to help with whatever is on the list. I was just spraying for bugs at a patient's house. Hope Holman says not watching, because that's not exactly in the job description. But you want to have that go-getter attitude and, never say that's not my job. And I pride myself in doing that. So it is a balancing act. And then with coaching clients, like, a big part of our job is to be on the phone. So I'll say, hey, after like that my client is, well taken care of and the household duties, or maybe I'm like on the phone on my headset doing the dishes, it is a balancing act. And I have to make sure that the volume on my headset is at a certain level so that I can still hear the first priority if they need me, So yeah, no, it's but I'm not complaining at any means. I love what I get to do. It is amazing. I wouldn't trade it for the world. You know, and really, I asked you about your vision. I'll be vulnerable and talk a little bit about mine. 10 minutes, got it. Thank you, brother. Our sound guy's like 10 minutes. So he knows how I can just keep going and go. He's like 10 minutes, bro. So yeah, it's like I'm working to be very intentional. My vision is that I will work 15 hours out of the week and make 6 figures. That's what I'm working towards, and I fully believe that I will get there no less than 5 years. 5 years is my max. I was really putting a lot of time and effort and thinking about that, and that is my vision. That's what I want.
Well, if that's what you want, you push harder and you get it faster.
Amen.
Yeah. In this light, with both of you guys being the caretakers, I know a couple others in other countries, and this one, they're caretakers as well. And they go in there, all they do is household chores, and some of them are very strict. Well, that's out of my expertise. I can't do that. I can't do that. Like one, they go into a house, and it's a house of 5 people, and they're supposed to be taking care of one person, and they're like, well, can you clean all 3 bathrooms? Well, I'm only supposed to take care of this person. You know, so they list a whole list of chores for them, and one even gave a whole list and couldn't even get it accomplished in the 3 hours that they were there. And then I have another person that is actually bedridden that needs a caretaker that a lot of times is distant. You know, simple things like, can you give me some food? You know, the necessities, not even the cleaning the house, the necessities.
Yeah.
I can't comprehend any of that myself. I always look for those nurses that actually can unbandage me and rebandage me back up, you know, the medical stuff, the scary stuff, the looking at the wound part. I would think the chores would be the easy part, right?
Sure.
But then I hear stories from, you know, Will and from a few other people that I know that are caretakers, and they tell me the horror stories of caretaking. And I'm like,
yeah, it's not all butterflies and rainbows. It's thing.
Yeah.
You know, and the part that I was really having trouble comprehending, Ken, was the fact that this is your wife. Like, this is your wife that you're taking care of. You know, that's the part. That's the it must be. It must add another layer of emotional turmoil.
It does. Seeing my wife in pain, like, you know, at times I would say she's depressed, you know, because, and there's barely anything I can do for during those times except be there for her and let her, you know, vent. Not, you know, being a guy, you got to fix the problem, right? In general speaking. But that's not, I can't do that with her. And I couldn't even if I could. Like, or I shouldn't even if I could. It's more like, you know, she has to come to terms with things. She has to do this. You know, going back for the longest time, she's like, you know, before her joint replacements, she tried so many ways to keep her original joints. You know, she was like, I'm only 30. I shouldn't have a hip replacement.
Right.
And in a perfect world, she won it.
Right.
But we don't live in that perfect world. But I couldn't tell her, you know, I couldn't be like, you should do this, like, or you got to do this, you know. So we put money into other things, alternative things, you know, making your own stem cells, not like you don't make it yourself, but have a doctor make it out of your own like body fat. Don't ask me how that works. Don't know. Experimental stuff that's not covered by insurance, and we had to pay out of pocket. And you know, I keep track of the finances. I think the 1 year before her hip replacement, I think she spent about 80 grand in medical costs. And so the funny thing is, we were living off of my salary while she was paying for all her medicals with hers. So it was basically we were a single income family, like a normal single income family, but had dual income. And yeah, it was rough for her to come to terms with it, and for me to not be able to just be like, shake her sometimes and be like, just get the replacement. It's tough to just hold your tongue and just love the person, like truly love them, because fixing their problems isn't always love. Kind of like coaching. We're there to help you fix your problems, but the thing is we're there to push you. You do actually hire us to push you, so we will push you. It's a little different. My wife didn't marry me just so I could push her.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. How terrible it would be to be married to your coach. Oh God, that would be terrible to be married to your coach.
Well, as coaches, we can't even help our family. Like Jesus, he couldn't help his own family.
Yeah.
It's always somebody else, because they know what you were before. They know where you were. How can you be this?
I know your brothers and your sisters. Your mom.
I know your past. I know your past. I know what you've done. And you're right. Like some people, they've already made that image of you in their mind, and you can't break it.
Well, the key to that is first impression.
People are lazy.
Yeah, first impression is the one that sticks. So when they first met you, whatever you were at the first is all they see the rest of your life,
dude.
No matter how much you've changed.
That is so true.
Now, speaking of that, I do want to thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
There have been a few changes for everybody to know. You'll notice in the footworks, we are no longer calling it 90-day challenge. It is now the Coach's Power Connection. So we do want to make sure a few corrections are made on our different calendar things, because it's moving forward. But
Absolute Coaches Power Connection.
It's more about getting everybody connected on a place where we can actually work together.
Yeah.
And
push each other.
Connected into a community where you can participate and where you can share, and you can also collect good wisdom.
Yeah.
So
how much does it cost to get into the community?
Oh, you know what? I think it's about $1,000.
Is it $1,000?
But you know what? We'll give it to you for free.
Free.
That's right.
Absolutely free. It doesn't cost $1,000. But hey, there's value there. There's value there.
Yeah.
So we want you to come out and join the community.
Yes. And the links in the bottom may or may not be working, but the titles have been corrected. We had very few minutes. It'll go back. We will go back and we will correct them. But just to let you know, there has been some changes being made, and things are getting updated. So stay tuned for the updates. But we are doing things to improve and make coaches even better.
Yep.
So thank you, everybody, for coming. We enjoyed you, and we look forward to seeing you on our next podcast. And Ken, we look forward to having you on another podcast down the road. And thank you, everybody, for coming. This has been Real Talk at the Round Table. And you never know what's going to come, because it is unscripted and it's live. So we'll see you next time.